Something so cruel, it defies all human logic. An entire family vanishes. The husband appears devastated, but there's something unsettling in his eyes. Behind the smiles on social media, there were suffocating secrets, lies that crept like shadows through the quiet hallways of a Colorado home. Chris Watts seemed like the picture-perfect family man, or at least that's what everyone thought. Today you're going to discover one of the most disturbing crimes in recent history, the murder of Shanann Watts and her two daughters, Bella and Celeste. Get ready to descend into the darkest corners of the human mind. If you're drawn to real-life cases told with depth and mystery, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. It helps keep stories like this alive. And now, join me as we dive into this chilling tale of family horror, betrayal, and terrifying coldness. But be warned, what you're about to hear might haunt you for a long time. The silence of a home can hide horrors no one ever imagined. In 2018, the United States was shaken by a brutal tragedy. An entire family vanished without a trace. And the main suspect? Someone who was supposed to protect them. Someone who slept beside the victim. This is the case of Chris Watts, a family man who shocked the world with a crime that feels like it came straight out of a nightmare. Here you'll get to know every detail, not just as headlines, but as a deep, unsettling dive into a sick and twisted mind. To make things clearer, we're going to follow the story step by step, lie by lie. At first glance, they looked like the perfect family. Smiling photos, family vacations, Facebook videos. Shanann Watts, pregnant with their third child, shared her daily life with joy. She showed her kids, her husband, their beautiful home. Everything seemed perfect. But behind those happy images were invisible cracks, little distortions in the picture-perfect image. It was as if something was about to collapse, but no one wanted to admit it. Not her, not him. And when the tragedy finally struck, there was no warning, just the terrifying silence of a house where life was torn away without mercy. On the morning of the disappearance, the first questions emerged. Where was Shanann? And the girls? Chris appeared cooperative, maybe too cooperative. He answered calmly, allowed access to the house, even gave interviews. But soon his behavior began to raise red flags. The cameras didn't capture grief, only control, a chilling coldness. It was like he was performing, playing a role, but the mask was about to fall. And what would be revealed, no one was truly prepared to face. This is not just another case. It's one of the most haunting crimes in Colorado's recent history. A twisted blend of manipulation, deception, and violence, as intimate as it was monstrous. Chris wasn't a stranger. He was the father, the husband, the protector, the last person anyone would suspect. And that's exactly what makes this story so terrifying. It's not just about a crime. It's about how evil can hide, right in front of our eyes. Now, let's go back to the beginning, to the part where everything seemed normal, where everything looked like love. Because before the horror, there was a couple, there was a home, and that's where the true nightmare begins. She was strong, outgoing, always smiling. Shanann Watts, born in 1984, faced hardships early in life, but she never gave up hope. He, Chris Watts, quiet and reserved, seemed like her perfect match. They met on Facebook, one of those stories that felt like it was written by fate. Soon after they were married. It was 2012. A new chapter began, one that to the outside world looked like a love story. But like many picture-perfect stories, there were cracks no one could see. The couple moved to Frederick, Colorado, in search of a fresh start. There they built a beautiful suburban home, financed by a heavy mortgage. Soon came their daughters, Bella, the eldest, sweet and observant, and Celeste, affectionately known as Cece, full of energy and life. On social media, it was all celebrations, laughter, love declarations, and family milestones. But behind the cameras, the smiles often masked exhaustion. And where? That bright, beautiful house was also the stage for quiet conflict. Shanann worked in online marketing, always active, always connected. Chris, more reserved, worked in maintenance for an oil company. While she showed herself to the world, he seemed to hide in the background. But that was never a problem, at least not at first. She loved him deeply and it showed, but maybe he had been pretending for far too long. Around 2015, financial problems started to scream. The couple filed for bankruptcy, with debts exceeding $400,000. Still, they kept up appearances, vacations, dinners, gifts, doing everything to maintain the standard. But keeping up appearances comes with a heavy price. Financial stress, combined with emotional strain, started eating away at the foundation of that marriage. What once was love began to feel like survival. Their relationship also faced pressure from family. Shanann had tension with Chris's parents, and the atmosphere between in-laws was, at best, strained. Over time, small conflicts grew into deep rifts, but she kept trying. She fought for her family, for the kids, for her husband. And when she found out she was pregnant with their third child, she believed that maybe, just maybe, love could be rekindled. Unfortunately, what was growing in Chris's heart was something else entirely. Behind the illusion of stability, the Watts' finances were like a house of cards, ready to collapse. In 2015, they filed for bankruptcy, drowning in debt that seemed impossible to repay. Maxed out credit cards, overdue mortgage payments, expenses far beyond their income, bills piled up, warnings arrived, financial despair made its home inside their house. Still, Shanann, ever confident online, kept posting a picture-perfect life, a mask, built with filters and smiles, but one that hid much more than sadness. Social media became a carefully curated storefront where every detail was edited. She smiled in videos, praised her family, praised Chris, but behind the camera, things were tense. Arguments were growing, and the pressure was becoming unbearable. Chris, meanwhile, was shutting down. Quiet and emotionally distant, he avoided problems, as if pretending they didn't exist would make them go away. But the problems only got worse. The tension with the in-laws also left scars. Shanann, protective and strong-willed, didn't tolerate certain behaviors from Chris's family. He, passive and indifferent, rarely intervened. The clash between both sides intensified, sparking arguments that echoed throughout the house. Chris, increasingly detached, began to show signs that something wasn't right, but no one knew just how far gone he already was. While Shanann tried to hold the family together, Chris was operating on a different frequency. He worked long hours, left early, came home late, and avoided real conversations. She tried to include him in family moments, recorded videos, asked him to participate. He smiled, mechanically. He was there, but not really there. And behind the silence, a dark truth was growing, one that had not yet come to light. A truth that very soon would destroy everything around them, even pregnant, even exhausted, even suspicious. Shanann kept fighting. She still believed their marriage could be saved. She believed the child she was carrying might be the beginning of a new chapter. But Chris didn't want new beginnings anymore. He wanted to run, to erase it all, to start over, even if it meant doing the unthinkable. In the summer of 2018, Chris Watts' transformation became impossible to ignore. He started working out obsessively, taking more care with his appearance, and revamping his wardrobe. Suddenly, the quiet, withdrawn man seemed full of energy, but not for his family. While Shanann was preparing to welcome another child, Chris was diving into secret messages and silent phone calls. And behind every half-baked excuse, there was one name, Nicole Kessinger, a co-worker who unknowingly would become a key piece in the unfolding nightmare. Chris and Nicole began an affair in June 2018. At first, everything was hidden, wrapped in lies. He told her he was separating. He fed Nicole a filtered version of reality, that his marriage was over, that the pregnancy was a burden. Nicole believed him, and Chris sank deeper and deeper into this new life, one built on escapism, freedom, and desire. Meanwhile, Shanann felt the growing emptiness on the other side of the bed, and that emptiness hurt more than any debt or family dispute. In July, Shanann traveled with the girls to visit family. Chris stayed behind for work, but while his wife was away, he was with Nicole. Days filled with secret meetings, romantic dinners, and shared moments far from the public eye. She documented every moment in her journal, unaware of the darkness consuming him. At the same time, Shanann was sending Chris loving messages, trying to reconnect, and receiving silence, distance, coldness. When Shanann returned to Colorado, she found a different man, cold, distant, irritable. There were no hugs, no real conversation, no affection. He avoided her, looked at the floor, answered in one-word replies. She tried to understand. She tried to talk, but every attempt fell flat. Chris wasn't really there anymore, at least not emotionally. He was living a lie, a dangerous, deadly lie. Even pregnant, even suspicious, Shanann still tried to salvage what was left of their relationship. She scheduled appointments, made plans, wrote letters. She believed he still loved her, that he was just confused, overwhelmed. But the truth was far darker. While Shanann was thinking about rebuilding, Chris was planning an ending, irreversible and fatal. To Shanann's observant eyes, something had definitely changed. Chris, once emotionally absent, now avoided her touch, averted his gaze, dodged even the simplest conversations. He started sleeping in another room. The affection had vanished, as if it had evaporated overnight. He no longer responded to her messages. He ignored her "I love yous." He showed no interest in the pregnancy updates. Shanann felt like she was talking to herself, trying to reignite a flame that he had already extinguished inside. And within her, a growing sense of unease began to take shape. She confided in her friends, through messages and voice notes, sharing her fears of losing her husband. Her intuition told her there was another woman. She would reread their old conversations, comparing them to the cold, distant replies she now received. Chris seemed like a stranger in his own home, a ghost. She asked questions, confronted him, tried to understand, and he always responded with vague, emotionless phrases. The indifference hurt more than any obvious betrayal. Their closest friends noticed the growing tension. Shanann was emotionally drained, yet still fighting for her family. Chris, on the other hand, kept up the act, claiming everything was fine, that it was just stress. But it was clear something else was eating away at him, and it wasn't work. Nicole, the mistress, had begun to fill the emotional space that once belonged to Shanann and the girls. And that invisible triangle hidden from the world's eyes was already deadly. Even so, Shanann kept planning the gender reveal party. She organized every detail with love, hoping to include Chris. He seemed distant, disconnected, faking happiness in front of the camera. It was a poor performance, but she kept believing. Maybe out of fear, maybe out of love, or maybe because no one wants to see the horror growing inside their own home. On their last trip together to North Carolina, the emotional gap between them became undeniable. She felt alone, even while accompanied. She tried to smile, but cried at night. Chris barely touched her, barely spoke to her, and deep down, she already knew. She could feel it, but never could she have imagined what he would be capable of doing just days later, because some betrayals break your heart, and others take lives. It was the early morning of August 13, 2018, when Shanann Watts arrived home after a business trip to Arizona. She landed around 1:48 a.m., exhausted, 15 weeks pregnant, dropped off at the door by her friend and co-worker Nicole Atkinson. The house was dark. Chris was supposedly sleeping with the girls, or at least pretending to. The couple's reunion in the darkness wasn't filled with affection. It was the beginning of a tragedy, one coldly planned and executed in deadly silence. In that moment, their home became the stage for a family massacre. After a brief argument about separation, Chris attacked Shanann without mercy. He strangled her with his bare hands while she, defenseless, struggled to breathe. There was no compassion, no hesitation. She died by suffocation, with her unborn child still alive inside her womb. And while her body lay lifeless on the bedroom floor, Bella and Celeste, their little daughters, were sleeping in the room next door. But the horror was just beginning. Chris carried his wife's body to his work truck, but he didn't go alone. He placed the girls in the back seat, still alive, confused, clinging to each other. They asked for their mom. They cried. During the ride to an isolated oil field owned by Anadarko Petroleum where he worked, the silence of despair filled the vehicle. There, in the middle of the Colorado desert, surrounded only by oil tanks, Chris completed his plan. With cold, calculated cruelty. Celeste was first. Wrapped in a blue blanket, she was suffocated by her father's own hands. Bella, just 4 years old, witnessed it all. Through tears, she looked up at him and asked, "Are you going to do this to me too?" Those words, spoken in pure terror, were later confessed by Chris himself during his police interview. Even with his daughter's plea, he didn't stop. He suffocated her too, with the same blanket, without compassion, without a soul. Then he disposed of the girls' bodies by forcing them into industrial oil tanks, shoving them through narrow openings. Shanann's body, he buried in a shallow grave just a few feet away. He covered his wife's remains with dry dirt, as if trying to erase her existence from the world. And then he cleaned himself up, recomposed his face, went back home, and assumed the most twisted role of all, the worried husband. But Shanann's silence and the absence of the girls were already screaming for justice. The next morning, Nicole Atkinson noticed something was wrong. Shanann had missed a prenatal appointment and wasn't responding to texts. By noon, Nicole drove to the house, and when she couldn't reach her friend, she called the police. At 1:40 p.m., an officer arrived for a wellness check. The scene was suspicious. Shanann's car was still in the garage, with the girls' car seats inside. Her purse, phone, keys, everything was in the house. Except for her, except for the girls. Chris showed up, calm, said he didn't know anything. He let the police into the house, pretending to be concerned. He even gave interviews to local TV stations, pleading for the safe return of his family, while scent-tracking dogs circled the scene of the crime. But his eyes, his gestures, could no longer hide the truth. On August 15th, Chris was given a polygraph test and failed. Shortly after, he asked to speak with his father, and then he confessed. First, a lie. He claimed he had killed Shanann after she supposedly took the lives of their daughters. But the truth started to unravel in layers, pulled out by the investigation. On August 16th, the bodies were found. Shanann, buried in a shallow grave. Bella and Celeste, still with traces of oil in their hair, were inside the industrial tanks. The brutality shocked the nation. The media struggled to explain such cold-blooded cruelty, and Chris Watts finally fell silent. The facade was over, but the horror was only beginning to be revealed, because the truth, no matter how terrifying, always finds a way to rise. On August 21st, 2018, Chris Watts was formally charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. 2 of those counts carried a chilling aggravator. The victims were children under 12, and he was in a position of trust and authority. He was also charged with unlawful termination of a pregnancy for the murder of Shanann's unborn baby, and 3 counts of unlawful disposal of a human body. At his first court appearance, bail was denied. Later, it was set at $5 million. And unbelievably, on September the 1st, he posted $750,000 and was released, temporarily. The Watts case was soon classified as a familicide, a rare and deeply disturbing crime in which the killer decides to exterminate their own family. Interestingly, many of these crimes occur in August, a transitional time before the school year begins, which, according to experts, can delay public awareness and the reporting of disappearances. Former FBI profiler Candice DeLong pointed out another chilling aspect. Most family annihilators end their own lives after the killings, but not Chris. He tried to move on, to hide everything, to start over, as if lives were disposable, as if nothing had ever happened. In a heartbreaking interview on the Dr. Phil show, Chris's lawyer revealed more soul-crushing details. Shanann was murdered after an argument about divorce. In the middle of the act, Bella walked into the room and saw it happening. Chris told his daughter that mommy was sick. Then he loaded Shanann's body into his work truck and placed his daughters, without car seats, in the back seat. There, in that vehicle, in the middle of nowhere, he suffocated Bella and Celeste, one after the other, with blankets, cold, methodical, ruthless. On November 6th, Chris Watts pleaded guilty to all counts of murder. The death penalty could have been pursued, but it wasn't, at the request of Shanann's family, who, even in agony, didn't want more bloodshed. On November 19th, he was sentenced to 5 life sentences, 3 to be served consecutively and 2 concurrently, without any possibility of parole. He also received an additional 48 years for the unlawful termination of the pregnancy and 36 years for hiding the bodies of his 3 victims. Immediately after sentencing, his bail was revoked, and he was returned to prison. A few weeks later, on December 3rd, Chris was transferred out of Colorado for his own safety. 2 days later, he arrived at Dodge Correctional Institution, a maximum security facility in Walpin, Wisconsin, where he remains to this day. No public visits, no forgiveness, no way out. The cell he now inhabits is small, cold, and silent, a reflection of the emptiness he created with his own hands. Chris Watts didn't just kill his wife and daughters, he murdered the very meaning of trust. He destroyed the symbol of fatherhood, and he carved his name forever into the list of the most horrifying crimes in U.S. history. The question that lingers like an open wound is this: what lives inside a human being who can commit such monstrous acts and still manage to smile for the cameras? If you made it this far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more dark stories real-life cases, and deep reflections on the most disturbing sides of the human mind. Leave a like, share this video, and help this content reach more people. But above all, take care of those you love and listen to the silences. Sometimes they scream louder than words.